All right, folks, we are live. Um, I'll be doing a live double exposure photography edit this evening. I've got a couple images from you all out there in the internet land, and then the rest of the edits I'm going to do of my double exposures. I'm just going to start with this one that somebody sent in. I think it was John or Joel. I'm sorry, Joel sent this in. So I'm just going to go jump right into it. So head into develop mode. I do have a set of double exposure presets that I have created over here that you may have seen me tag them in some posts, but I call them DE. I have 01, 02, 03, 04, 05, and 6. And I like to start with them sometimes, and then sometimes I just abandon them, and I just hover over them to check it out. And so that's one of my presets. I'm not going to just apply a preset, but I do want to show you that there are certain types of editing for double exposures, and these 6 are the ones they're pretty diverse, but I've turned them into my Mark Maya 02 film pack. And so I've kind of pushed back a little bit with them. So I do have these for sale on my website if you're interested in that, but that's not why I'm here. I wanted to show you how I edit them. So I'm going to reset it really quick. This is a really rad image, Joel, by the way. So right then. He did a really good job with white balance. So I'm just going to leave the white balance the way it is currently. And I'm just going to go jump into it. So I just work my way down. I start off with exposure usually, and I'll crank up my contrast. As a baseline, I'm usually bringing down highlights, increasing shadows a bit, lowering whites a little bit, and increasing blacks a little bit. Sometimes I'll bring down clarity a little bit. Sometimes I increase it. It really just depends. I'm curious what Joel shot with here. This is 35. 32. Okay. Interesting. Cool. Looks like he shot with a 5D probably. Usually I'm bringing down my saturation here a little bit, and I'll revisit this in the end. So this is where I spend a lot of my time, is tone curves. There's 2 kind of options with tone curves that I like to spend my time in. My first one, again, I'm going to create a baseline by lowering my shadows and my darks a little bit and increasing lights. And I'll either leave highlights the same or I will lower them here. And that is my baseline, what I usually do. This is how you create a really, really organic contrast. And I'll zoom in here to show you that. And I'll just turn off the tone curves. So there's before and there's after. So that's how you create that really, really customized, nice contrast there in the tone curves. So lowering darks, lowering shadows, increasing lights. And some people like to increase highlights. I don't. It's just my thing. So next thing I do is there's this little button. It's really hidden. I don't like this design. I feel like there should be something a little more obvious down there. But anyways, you can edit the point curve, is what Lightroom calls it. So when you click that, those little options go away and you just have this random line here. And if you click on that line, there's a little point that pops up, and so I'll start with 3 points usually. In actuality, it's 5 points because you have 1 in the end and then you have 3 in the middle. So starting off, what I want to do is just create a little S by dragging down this little guy. And again, you see contrast already being added. And I might bring that up, but maybe not. So with normal edits, you would probably crank this up just a smidge. But with my double exposures, you're going to see this like in a few minutes when I work on my double exposures that I've shot. You're going to see this S just go all to hell, and that's okay. But normally you will have that in an S. And again, so there's before, there's after. Just after just a minute of tone curves, you can see the drama there. Love it. Really good job, Joel. It's really rad. Fantastic. Love how I used the skyline and the clouds. This is just incredible right here. This is, by the end of this, I'm just gonna die. How lovely. So one thing that I do is over here in the tone curve area, I actually create another little point right there. And I like to drag it down just a little bit sometimes. And then so my goal, by the way, is I'm trying to bring down those highlights a little bit more. I'm trying to mute them. That's what I'm doing. Let me zoom in on this highlight back here and see if I can show you what I'm talking about. So I'll back up. So see that? Just by dragging that end little point right down right there, it actually will mute those highlights just a little bit. And what that does is that allows my viewer to not get as easily distracted. And in this highlight here might have done the same. Let's see. A little bit, yeah. A little bit. In a double exposure, that's really, really important to have the focus on the person's profile, because it's kind of abstract. So you want to demonstrate that objective kind of art principle, and that you want something to look like something in a double exposure. So it can't just be random generally if you want to look good, especially with humans in it. So that's a good starting point. Again, I may revisit it. So I'll just move on down to my hue and saturation and luminance. I'm just going to leave hue where it is. I dig it. One thing I usually do is bring down yellows just a smidge. And then here I'm just going to notice what I have. Let's see. I might bring down some oranges just a little bit. What I'm doing there is I'm using I guess it's a backslash key right below the delete key, just to see what happened, the image I started with, So there's before, there's after, looking good. Makes me feel better to just check myself, I'll use Command Z often too, just to check a small edit as well. So let's go to luminance. I'm just going to move sliders around. That's really all I do. I move sliders and I pay attention. Sometimes I want to crank it just to see what happens here. Yeah, I dig that. It's getting quite interesting. Okay. And you can see how, you go too much and you don't want to go too much. I'm good with limits. Sometimes I like to totally crank up blues just to see what will happen with the skies, especially something like this, or just back and forth. I mean, you can look at the drama that's being added just by lowering the luminance a little bit. Very interesting. I don't want to do it too much because I want the focus to stay right here, because Joel did such a good job of thinking about those lines. So I like that. Looks good. And I'm just going to see about the purple magenta. And if another interesting thing, if let's say you want to focus on this skyline right there, this orange skyline, you can actually push this little circle, and once you push it and hover over a part of your image, you can actually click and drag, and all the colors in that part of the image will actually be adjusted. So I'm just clicking and dragging. So you can see there's oranges and yellows. See how oranges and yellows are moving? Really interesting. So it's a cool feature. That way you don't have to sit there and think about it. You can tell Lightroom, hey, you look at the details for me. So looks good. There's before, there's after. Okay. Next is split toning, right down here. So you got to put saturation up a little bit to see some type of change in split toning as you move this little guy. Let's see what we got. I'm probably going to do very little in the highlights or none because, again, he did a really good job and I don't want to take away from those colors. What I will do is maybe move shadows to a little bit of blue or aqua. Move the balance a little bit. Let's see what happens. Looking interesting. Okay. So there was before, there's after. Good. I like to add blue and aqua shadows. It seems like well, number one, it's my style. I just like it. But number two, it seems with double exposures, it adds a little bit of drama to have those complementary colors in there. It's really interesting. All right. Let me move down to sharpening. So I'm going to move this like right over their lips there so you can see what happens. So with sharpening, I like to hang out maybe like in 45 to 50 with double exposures, not with my normal stuff. So if you hold Option when you're doing sharpening, as you move these sliders, you actually have these extra visual views. So I'm just going to crank that up and you can see what's happening. So Lightroom is giving me this, this ability just to see the edges of things, right? And so how far do I want to go? And the same thing with detail. So you can see, I really don't want all that detail. And then this is my favorite thing. So if I hold Option and move the masking thing, it gives me a similar thumbnail to when you add a layer mask in Photoshop, right? So as I drag it, the white part is showing me where sharpening is actually being added. It's a fantastic tool. Love it. Use it all the time. So now most of the sharpening is on my subjects. Lovely. Looking good. Move down. Let's see. Sometimes I'll just check to see if enabling profile corrections will help. I've purchased the Visco film several years ago, and I've used their profiles. So sometimes I'll use the Acqua Vista 100. So there it was before, there it was after. Dig it. And sometimes I just leave it where it is, which is fine. So move some shadows a little bit. Yeah, I dig the green shadows, I think. Might back it up just a little bit. All right, so then I work my way back up. I missed dehaze, by the way. So dehaze is another way to add a little bit of contrast. I'll crank it up just to show you what'll happen. See that? Lovely. I'll back it up. See that? So lovely, man. Joel, you really crushed this image. I really dig it. God. Okay. So I work my way back up. I'm gonna actually back up just a little bit with dehaze. Okay. I really just am impressed with this profile here. Look at that. And I know you're probably thinking, why is he touching stuff? He already moved things. Well, I like to see if I can make it better, right? Sometimes you just need to take a minute away. So, yeah, it's okay. Don't judge me. See, I mean, I actually made a change that I was happy with. I focused on the highlights and now actually, here, let's see, there it was before, I believe. Well, that's what it was before. And so I added a little bit of orange yellow highlights, and then now we have more of a focus on their faces. So fantastic. I'm good. I think I'm good with my luminance. Okay. And just experiment a little more. I'm probably just going to focus on my shadows up the top because I really would love to be able to see her arm a little bit more and more of the body. So I might bring back some shadows there. And I'm just going to zoom in on that. Love zooming in here. That's what I'm talking about right there. So bring it up just a little bit. Just subtle. Maybe the same with the blacks. I have to be careful here because I don't want to take away from the contrast of the profile. So, yeah, I don't know. I might just add like a gradient here or something. Let's see. Like a shadow increase gradient. That may have been what I wanted. Nice. And since Joel sent me a raw file, I can do this all day. I can mess around with this file and it's good. So let's see. I use gradients all the time, by the way. Yep, that's exactly what I wanted. And you can see the before there and the after. Just wanted a little bit of shadows brought back. I'm going to do another gradient to address this right here. I'm not digging that in probably this side. So I'm going to press M in here. And let's do like a highlight save. Too much though. And I'll do the same on this side. That might bring down exposure. Maybe not. I'm going to do one more as well. I'm going to bring it in a little closer. That's good. And then one more. I create a ton of different gradient filters, by the way, like this. Do one more here just to play. Let's see. Nice. There's before, there's after. Fantastic. Okay. So I'm going to head back up to my tint and temp. This is the color balance area. I haven't changed that yet at all. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to crank it just to see if it can, again, if it can make the image better. That's all I'm looking for. Too much, obviously. And if I don't want to click and slide, you know, small amounts, I can actually click on the word and then use the plus and minus key on the keyboard and go up in 5 increments. So that's what I'm doing now. And I actually needed to bring down to a more green. I hang out in the greener side of temp usually. And I do the same with temp. Let's see what happens. And just crank it and see. I think we were okay where we were, probably. So there's where we started. I might go up a couple. Maybe 4, 5, 6. There we go. Lovely. All right. So that was a Lightroom edit with Joel's image. There was Joel's. I'm assuming that's out of camera. It's 5D, and there's the edit. So let's get another one real quick. Let's see. So I will do one of mine. I really like this one. Let me show you the two images. So this is the textured shot. That was the at a camera, and the portrait is, where is that portrait? Portrait's right here. Okay. So let's go in there and edit that thing. All right. So I'm just gonna look at my presets and hover over and see how they respond to them first. I just want to see what the potential is, and like I said, most of the time I may not even use them. It's just maybe I just want to see what this thing could be, or what I could even start with and work with, because many times it's just too much, you know. But at least gives me an idea of what it potentially could be. Interesting. Or maybe I hover over one of my other presets, the ones that are a little less intense, right? Color is going to be a big issue here. And the reason why is because the original portrait was shot with a bluer background right at sunlight, and I'll show you. So see that there's actually a lot of blue in there, and then this was actually shot on a day that was significantly more neutral, right? So there were a lot more clouds. So it's going to be an interesting color balance game here, but it's okay. I'll figure it out. Let's click on one of these puppies. So there's my MarkMet 03C that I just applied. That maybe I'll start with that. So you can see, I mean, it's still all very baseline. What I did. So my highlights and my whites go down, my blacks and shadows go up. I'll go ahead and increase contrast. That's what I usually do with my double exposures, especially there. Looks like I've got clarity down to -1, saturation down. Might bring it up just a little bit. So yeah, those reds are going to be an interesting issue because I shot this image, her portrait, really cool, like cold temperature, right? But the other image was shot pretty well as far as white balance. That's going to be an interesting game. Might be a black and white image. So let me go down here. So again, lower my darks a little bit, increasing my lights, and let's see. I'm going to zoom in here. The reason why I zoom in is because I want to look at this area, because this is where I want other people to look, right? This is really the subject of the image. Like the other stuff is just kind of extra, you know, makes it interesting. So, this little guy. So I need to address the background right here. Take it back. I'm just going to crank that down. There it goes. If you saw, you probably saw that background go muted, and I'll back up. So there was before right there. Look how bright and distracting everything is, and I'll go forward again. And now it's all muted. And that just happens with that extra little end point there. Okay. Increase exposure just a little bit. Add one down there at the bottom sometimes just to help with contrast. And you saw contrast being added. And shadows filling a little bit more detail showed up, you know. Let's move down here. It looks like I've messed around with the hue even on this image, so that may be what's going on with my colors too. Look how you can change a specific color. Change the color of the leaves to a little more orange. Change those greens. It's actually kind of interesting. And my yellow saturation for that preset was cranked all the way down, right? So sometimes I do that. I want to keep that as well. Let's see how much orange is in this image. So notice how, like I was talking about in the previous edit, when you crank up a blue luminance, when you shoot over exposure, you're using the sky a lot, right? So sometimes that fixes this look you get. It will fill the sky there pretty well. So many times that's what I'm doing to get that clean background look there, is I'm increasing the luminance of the blue, okay? So go down, let's see what I did with split toning here. So my highlights are fairly warm. Might need to change my balance just a little bit. Never mind. It's all a game of experimentation, y'all. Gotta enjoy it. Enjoy the process. As you can see, there is no one-click edit. It doesn't exist. I'm sorry, but it doesn't. Even though you probably paid for that somewhere, it doesn't exist. You may have even bought presets from me. Okay, I'm gonna shut it. All right. So I just want to test out I'm gonna crank that down a little bit. My blue shadows. So like I said, I don't think it's gonna work just because the portrait was shot at such a cool temperature. It's not gonna jive together. So I may just have to make this image really warm in the shadows and highlights with split toning, because it kind of fixes the fact that her skin is really, pale and bluer. See that? So there's before, there's after. So far, looking good. Let's go down to my sharpening and do the same. So again, I'm holding Option. There we go. Let me go over her face. Where you at? Good. I'm holding Option and dragging. Good. And then my favorite, masking, I'm holding Option and dragging. That way we get those sharpened pixels there. And let's see if that does anything. I'm good. Okay. Skip all that. Let's see dehaze here. I'm going to zoom in to see how dehaze responds. And yes, this is how I edit, by the way. So I'm pretty meticulous, and I will sit here and go back and forth with little things like this. It's important to me. I'm gonna even change that to 5, just to add a little bit more. I'm looking at her eye, and I'm looking up here as well. Just noticing. Again, if you purchase Visco, you even have these camera profiles in here that you can use to simulate a certain look. Visco is amazing. VSCO.com, I think. If you don't know them, go check them out. And their presets and camera profiles and tone curve profiles are just outstanding, and I use them consistently. Let me back up and look at this thing as a whole. Coming along, good. So there's before, there's after, all right. Let me work my way back up. Good there. And again, I'm just gonna move this, yeah, no. Sometimes increasing luminance can actually take away from distractions, as you can see. And so here's an interesting example, right? So I showed you in the previous edit, if you click on this little button, if I hovered over her skin and just click and dragged up, so whatever colors are in her skin, which if you look over at saturation right now, orange and yellow are going up because I'm dragging up. So there are oranges and yellows in her skin. And I just increased the saturation with that. Now my issue again is that there are tons of oranges and yellows in this area. And as you can see, it kind of took away from her face. So I'm actually okay with not increasing that. Might get back in here just to see what happens. I like zooming in, I like looking up here. One of the reasons I look up here, by the way, is because this kind of simulates how my audience might view my photos in Instagram or Facebook as they're scrolling through their phone, right? So I just glance up here, you know, how is this image going to look? Yep, and I'm in Lightroom CC, by the way. Before, after, moving along. And then I'm going to revisit all these little guys just for a second, just to see if I can make it a small amount better. Good. And some of you are probably sitting there thinking, why didn't he touch grain? Well, the reason why I didn't touch grain in Lightroom is because I don't add grain in Lightroom. I add grain in another piece of software called Alien Skin Exposure. And I'll show you that in just a bit and how that works with Lightroom. And then again, I'm just gonna crank my white balance just to see if I can make it a small amount better after all those edits. Back up. Probably just change that to like 9. And let's see. Making it a little bit warmer, so notice how warming it up just kind of, it filled it just a little bit again because her face is just so cool in that portrait. So, okay, so there's that. One other thing that I would do is take care of this. So show you how to do it, how I do that. You may do it in a totally different way. I don't use Photoshop to take care of stuff like this, by the way. Some people look at my before images and they're like, man, you definitely use Photoshop. No, I didn't. This is how I did it. So I press Q, go into like the heal and clone mode. And this is how I take care of it. I start off with heal because clone seems to be a little intense sometimes. So I'll just click on the distracting part. and see if that does anything. See that? That was nice. And I'll just click on another one and click on another one and then move them around as needed. So it's already gotten rid of a few distractions. Now that one obviously needs to be addressed. Let me do that. Click there, maybe there. Move you over here. And we got one more little guy that's bugging me right there. And now I just got rid of all those distractions that quickly. So if you press Q and go back in, show you before. Right there's before, and there's after. Just such a better portrait. There's one more little guy that I'm going to take care of right here as well. Don't like this. All right. And I might even spend more time on there. I want to get to one more before we end the session. But that line there, it looks like it's been edited, even though I know it hasn't because that was the out of the camera, right? Like it looks like I did something there. So I would probably address that in some way, shape, or form. But anyways, so there's before, there's after. Looks fantastic. Excited, stoked about that. So let me do one of this couple here. And I've actually already edited this image here, and I actually did it live, but I will do another one because I did multiple ones of those guys. Let's see. Oh, no, wait. Yeah. But let me do one more quick one here in Lightroom, and then we're going to head over to Photoshop and do one because I know some of y'all are itching to see a Photoshop. Here, let me do one with this building here. So I just did like a quick preset add on this one. So I'll edit it for you. I'll reset it. All right, cool. So first thing I would do is straighten that puppy out. Good. And I'm gonna make it just a little bit warmer. And I go ahead and crank contrast, bring down my highlights, increase shadows, lower whites, increase blacks. Already looking better. Decrease saturation a little bit. Before there's after, already looking good. And head down to my tone curves. Lower shadows, lower darks, increase lights. See what I can do with my highlights there. I don't know. This is a different one. Very, very different. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm probably going to revisit the highlights. And then let me add my little points here. Bring down this side. And I may add one more to add a little more contrast. I'll bring down this one. A little bit too much. So this might be one where I actually will utilize an extra little point in there. Just to bring down a little bit. So there's before, there's after, already looking good. I'm gonna go ahead and there we go. Looks a little better. There was just too much magenta in that image, so I brought down my white balance there. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and bring down some blues. I'm just gonna see what happens with my oranges here. I'm just gonna get rid of luminance. I'm good. I'm good. So blue is probably going to be the interesting one here. Let's see what happens. Look at that. Very interesting. I mean, you can go, I wouldn't go fully either way, but depending on how you kind of want to edit it. I'm just watching that thumbnail in the top left as I'm doing this. And it's like there's not so much aqua. Okay, go down to split tones. See what happens. Cool, dig it. And shadows are already very cool, so maybe a little more green. Or maybe I'm wrong, maybe they're warmer. And I'm just gonna move it back and forth until I like what I see. Yep. That's all editing is. Here's before, there's after so far. It's looking good. I'm digging it. And yes, this was an in-camera double exposure. All I've shown you so far is in-camera double exposures. I rarely do Photoshop double exposures, but I'm getting ready to show you how to do one in just a second. So I'm gonna be haze. Lovely. Green shadows just a little bit, and then I'm gonna work my way back up. So this was an easy one. It just worked out. Oh yeah, I missed sharpening, right? So let me hover over his face. That's what I care about when I'm sharpening, right? And finally, the masking. I'm holding Option, by the way. Before, after, good. Moving on up. Again, I like revisiting stuff I've already moved just to see if I may have missed a small amount. And see, so this increase, it needed just a little bit of increase with that blue luminance. That from there. Interesting. Yep. That's what it needed. So okay there. So here I'm just going to be a little meticulous with my blacks and whites. Just going to notice how they respond. I love his glasses in this. This is the artist Ben Sollee, by the way. He's an amazing cellist from Kentucky. Okay. Before, after, and then let me do my little white balance crank here. Don't be scared just to crank these things. You're not gonna break it, and you can't do anything you can't undo, you know? I think I'm gonna go down, -9, -10, good. And then I'm just gonna see what dragging this puppy will do. Kind of like it warmer. It's really interesting. Let me click on temp and use my minus key because I think it's a little too warm. I really find that interesting. There's before, there's after. I dig it. Cool. Let's head over to Photoshop for the final edit really quick. So these two images, this is another one from Joel actually. This image is one he took. So I'm gonna actually take his raw portrait and I'm gonna take my texture shot that I've got here and I'm going to combine it in Photoshop. here. And then I'm going to attempt to take it back into Lightroom and maybe edit it. I don't know. Again, I don't ever do this, but I'm just going to play. So in order to get this textured shot on top of this, if you don't see these tabs, press F a couple times, it'll toggle through. So I'm going to click on this tab, click and drag and hover over the portrait tab and continue to click and then let go right over top of them, and you'll see that layer come over here. And I'm going to press Command T to transform, hold Shift and just spin it around real quick. Press Enter. And so it's gonna simulate what doing it in camera does, but in the blending mode up here. So I have to have that textured shot selected, and then where it says normal, go down to the third panel, and then play around with those puppies. I'm gonna get their faces in there probably. Yeah. And this is another cool thing about Photoshop, is that you can do stuff like this. Can't do this type of stuff in camera. Let's see. Kind of like this. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to work or not. We'll see. All right, yeah, so I'm going to let Photoshop blend these things, and I'm just going to click through those blend modes to see if I can get as close to what I think it might look like in camera. Whoa, there you. Okay. And that is actually what it might look like if you shot this in camera. Yeah, there's another interesting example. I might do something with. Kind of like that. That's cool. My computer's like freaking out because I'm in Photoshop. So that's pretty cool. I mean, so you can shoot a double exposure with any camera, shoot in RAW, and then do what I just did, and then use the blend modes up here in this whole area. That's just like any other double exposure. I'm gonna transform it a little bit more. I'm gonna give her a little flower crown with it. It's cool. There we go. And so I'll save it, and then I guess I'm just going to take it back into Photoshop, or I'm sorry, Lightroom, and then I'll be done. It may open up automatically because I might have opened it up from Lightroom. Let's see. Yeah, there it is. Cool. So when you open up a raw image from Lightroom into Photoshop, it actually, once you save it, it'll give you the edited version back in Lightroom instantly. And so I'm going to go ahead and close out Photoshop because it's unhappy right now. It's fine. Okay. And then when Lightroom catches up, I think I have a TIFF is what I have here in the end, which is, you know, it's a great file too. It's not raw, but if you have a camera out there and you you don't have the 5D Mark III, you don't have one of the other cameras that does the in-camera feature, then you can do exactly what I just did. And it's very simple, very easy, and then just bring it right into Lightroom and edit it just like I did. You know, no big deal. And you have the ability to kind of play around with the placement of the texture shot and the portrait too, you know. So I dig that feature, and it's struggling there too. So, and it may take just a minute. So I mean, I have time to edit that file, but that's how you would composite two images in Photoshop so easily. So, like I said, play around with your raw files. So he took, again, this is not a double exposure. He took that and sent it to me, and I just opened it up in Photoshop with my textured shot. So, all right, let me head back over here and see if we got any questions or new comments going on. Oh, there I am. All right. Okay, so we're almost out of time, but I want to show you this one I did today. Just kind of rad. So it's actually from the same portrait that you saw for the first edit. And so it is right here, right? So I took this portrait and it was hanging out on my 5D Mark III, and I was outside walking and I saw this rose that had been thrown down on the ground, and I was like, oh, that looks beautiful and interesting, and it smelled amazing, right? And so I was like, okay, I'll just grab it and take it back into my studio. And when I walked back in, I noticed that, you know, just with the way that the light was falling on the floor and the amount of light that was on the flower, I was like, this would be a really beautiful double exposure. So I still have this portrait on my card, and I pulled my camera out and started shooting, and I got this fantastic double exposure. So I'm really, really happy. And you know, I think that it's one of those things that you know, you got to just train yourself to pay attention. You got to train yourself to notice small things, and in this case, literally stop and smell the roses. It smelled amazing. So, so no pun intended, but yeah, that's it. So I have my double exposure online course being released in, what is it, 9 days. If you're interested in it and learn a little bit more about this, you can do the early bird enrollment. It's going on right now for $39. After that, it's actually going to increase all the way up to $199. So it's going to be a fairly large jump. So if you sign up for the early bird enrollment, you're actually going to end up saving around $160. When it launches on April 1st, it's going to go up to $199, and that's where it will hang out. So if you are interested in this course, ask me about it. Go find it. I've got links all over the internet, but that's all I have, and I love y'all so much, and thank y'all so much for sending me files and interacting with me. I appreciate it, and we'll be doing more soon. So check back.